this is Hua. I am back here to read part 6 of Piquant. Parts 1 through 5 can be found in the videos below, and if you have not subscribed yet, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Enjoy! A child. I had a child growing inside of me. A little life was forming together from me and Garrison. The child was going to be inside me for 9 months. I was going to be a mother. It was still unbelievable. I didn't want to believe it. The following morning, the doctor took me and Garrison into the ultrasound room and showed me a glimpse of the baby. There, we saw our baby that we created together. The actual truth hit me hard, and I cried. When Garrison tried to comfort me, I pushed him away. I hadn't forgiven him. Perhaps it wasn't his fault, but the pain was still very real. I was released later that day. I hadn't called my mother. I wasn't sure if Garrison had. When I arrived home, Mrs. Potter had made me some hot chicken soup, but my stomach was unsettling and I vomited bile. Garrison helped me to the bedroom and put me in bed before he came back with a tray of hot tea. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "I'm tired. Can you leave me alone, please?" Garrison shook his head. "I don't want to." "Please do it. I'm tired of fighting with you. Can you just do as I ask, please?" He came to sit on the bed beside me. When he reached for my hand, I pulled it out of his reach. "Peyton, don't do this. It was a misunderstanding. It's not even about Tasha anymore. It's about you not granting me what I want. I don't fit in your life here, Garrison. I never have. Can you just sign the divorce papers?" He stood up. "No. Keep asking. The answer will be no." "Then move out of this room. I don't want you in here with me." "Fine. As long as you stay here in this house, I would do anything." I hadn't called my mother. I wasn't prepared to tell her. I wasn't prepared to take her reaction. Andrew came to visit me, but I denied his request. I didn't want to see anyone. I had stopped planning the wedding, and all sense of happiness drained from me. I didn't want this anymore. After hearing his mother's take on me, I wanted out. I didn't belong here, and I didn't want to be here. Okay, so I was pregnant. That's what happens when you have unprotected sex. It was my fault. I should have taken precaution. But whatever happens, the baby will not be harmed. I will raise him to my best ability. Garrison would always have a place in the baby's life, but not in mine. It was too difficult to love. It was too heartbreaking to want to be in love. I began to focus solely on my child and let the pregnancy cure the heartache. It would be the reason for me to move on, to live. My baby wouldn't judge me. After a week cooped up in bed, I finally dressed decent and went downstairs for breakfast. I was still sore, but I was beginning to feel stronger. The smell of bacon hung in the air, and as soon as I breathed it in, I ran to the bathroom and retched. "Peyton!" Garrison cried as he came in after me. He held my hair as I emptied my stomach. He gave me a warm towel and wiped my mouth as he helped me to stand. I pulled away from him, and he grabbed my arm. "Here, let me help you," he said. "I don't need you," I muttered. I pushed past him and reached for Mrs. Potter's outstretched hand. She helped me to sit and brought a cup of tea to me. "Tea usually helps settle my stomach when I was pregnant, my lady. The sickness usually goes away within a few months," she said. I smiled at her politely and took a small sip of the tea. The warmth of it comforted me. Garrison walked out and she stood up to go, but I held her hand. He noticed it and laughed. "He's been very worried about you, my lady." "It's all an act." "I can assure you it's not. I have never seen him this way before." I ignored her as I drank my tea. I released her hand and she took it as her cue to go. As soon as she was gone, Garrison rounded the corner. I didn't look at him as he came to sit down beside me. He pulled the newspaper from the table and began reading. If he wanted to play this game, I could too. I continued to drink my tea, the warmth of it soothing my sickness and making me tired. Before I knew it, I drifted off. I woke pressed against a warm body. I was sleeping in Garrison's arms in our bed. I looked up and saw he was wide awake and staring at me. I tried to push away, but he tightened his hold around me. Don't, please, he whispered. Why aren't you in the other room? You were dreaming. I came in and you turned into me for comfort. Did I? I couldn't remember. I looked away and laid my hand on his chest. It was firm and strong, like the rest of him. His scent tickled my nose, and I felt comforted by somehow. Did you mean what you said? He asked. I looked up at him. About what? His eyes darkened. About loving me. I looked away. He was asking me this now? Slowly, his hand came to tilt my gaze to meet his. I saw my reflection, still as beautiful as ever. All the emotions came rushing back to me, and when he lowered his head, our lips were inches from each other. But he was waiting for me to come my way to make sure it was okay for him to kiss me. I needed him, and so I closed the distance. It was a soft kiss, but still I felt the passion burn between us. When we pulled away, I could feel the heat. Did you? He asked. What about you? He smiled at me. Why are you avoiding the question? Why are you avoiding it? He cocked his head. I'm not, Peyton. Every single word I said that day, I said it from the bottom of my heart. I think I loved you before I even met you. But we're not fit to be together. He shook his head. Don't let others decide how we should be, Peyton. My mother is the last person you should listen to. I know what she said hurt you, but if you divorce me now, she'll be smiling. Don't let her. I realized he was right. I'm sorry. For what? I didn't know I was pregnant. He touched my cheek. It wasn't your fault. I wanted to come home to you, but my mother was being crazy, accusing my father. And then Tasha came over and threw everything out of control. And you must have called sometime between then. I don't even know. When I came back home, Mrs. Potter told me, and I drove off after you. When I found you, God damn, every part of me died. And then when I heard you were pregnant, I wanted to kill myself for not protecting you. What did your mother want? He shut his eyes, obviously the pain still fresh. When he opened them again, they were clouded with a darkness that frightened me. My mother. If I didn't have her genes inside of me, I'd never have anything to do with that woman. Talk to me, Garrison. She left when I was young. She had the mansion, the money, the love. But it wasn't even enough for her. She wanted more. She wanted my father to give up his claim to his title. I frowned. Why would she want that? Because she was in love with someone else. Oh, I whispered quietly. He moved his gaze toward the window. She begged my father to take pity on her. She had fallen in love. It wasn't her fault. But my father refused, and she left without a second thought. I was still young, but I remember the look she gave me when she left. It was a look that has burned in my memory for the past 20 years. If a mother could give her own child that kind of glare, she wasn't meant to be a mother. He turned back to face me. She came back because her lover had left her and taken all of her money. She had nowhere to go and wanted my father to take her back in. She was out of luck, or so she claimed. Oh my God, I hope your father denied her. He did more than denied her. He kicked her the bloody hell out. Well, good for him. But not before she was able to curse him, curse me, and curse you. I almost pounded her when she mentioned you. And then Tasha came to beg my father to have me divorce you. The two of them started fighting against us with words and screams, and all I wanted was to come home to you. And then you did come home, I started, and you were gone. Tears burned to my eyes. Yes. Yes, what? Yes. I meant what I said in the hospital about loving you. He smiled. So can I move back in? Andrew came by the following day, and I finally had the courage to see him. I was a bit embarrassed at what I had done. I was also guilty of trying to leave his son. I wasn't sure he was going to be kind to me. Wearing a yellow maxi dress, trying to look like the noble wife, I finally made myself walk down the stairs. Garrison met me halfway. He looked so handsome in his blue sweater and jeans. It was a simple look that he owned. He smiled at me and came to wrap his arms around me, his hands falling to my belly. "How are you this morning?" he asked. "I'm well. I haven't had any morning sickness yet, so I'm not complaining." "Good. My father is waiting for us. Let's go." We went down the stairs to the sunroom where he was sitting, sipping a cup of tea. When he saw us, he rose and offered me his arms. I walked into them and he held me gently before he released me. We sat down across from each other. "You had me worried, young lady," Andrew began. "When you were in the hospital, I was certain Garrison was going to be next because he refused to eat." I turned to look at Garrison, who was smiling. "Thank you for coming out to see me. I'm sorry I denied your visits. I wasn't myself, and I didn't want anyone seeing me at my worst." "Of course, I understand completely. I should hope my unborn grandson is well." I smiled. "Grandson? Can you see my excitement? I've longed to bounce a babe on these knees." Garrison leaned in to kiss my temple. "We're excited to oblige your request, Father." Andrew laughed. "You look lovely, Peyton. Pregnancy agrees with you." "Thank you so much." Andrew stayed for lunch, and we chattered about the wedding. He was more excited about presenting me to the public than I was. When he mentioned that the guest list had grown, I felt my insides jumbled. In 6 months, I'll be very large. I'm afraid it might create a scandal," I said as I chewed my steak. The look on the men's faces finally took in what I said. Andrew sat back and wiped his mouth on a napkin and nodded. "Right. How about we move the wedding date to next month? You're currently only 4 weeks along, so by then you still won't be showing that much. You may still fit in your original designs, perhaps take an inch or two from the bosom." I blushed. "What?" Garrison laughed. "Father, how about you just take care of calling everyone to let them know that the wedding has been moved up, and I'll help Peyton to take care of dress fittings." I smiled. "Thank you." Andrew laughed. "Very well." I finally worked up the courage to call my mother that evening. As I predicted, she wasn't happy that she was the last one to know about the accident. She made sure her voice was heard, and the words she chose to say made me cringe and felt guilt at keeping it from her. By the time she was done lecturing, I felt exhausted. "Are you done?" I asked. "I'm just getting started," she cried. "Well, okay, can I at least just get one thing out of the way first, and then you can go back to rambling?" "What?" she almost shouted. "Well, you're going to be a grandma." There was a long pause, and then she laughed out loud. My heart leapt as I heard her start crying. "Oh, my Lord, I'm beyond thrilled. Honey, why didn't you say something?" "Oh my God, Mother, you were talking for the past 10 minutes. "No, I wasn't." I rolled my eyes. "Mother, seriously." I heard her laugh. "Oh my goodness, I'm going to be a grandma. I'm so happy I could just fly over there." "Well, that's the other thing. With me being pregnant, the wedding has been pushed up to next month. You might just get to visit sooner than you thought." "That's fine. I want to visit you anyways." Just hearing my mother's voice sent all of my emotions in place again. My heart felt better, as if everything was going to be all right. Becoming a mother was scary. I wasn't sure how it was that my own mother handled me herself. My grandmother wasn't alive when my mother got pregnant with me, and I was an emotional mess. One moment I wanted to cry. The next I wanted to run my fingers up the wall. If becoming a mother was supposed to help me become grateful for my own, It was definitely working. Andrew hired a few etiquette experts to help me get into shape for public display. It wasn't that he was embarrassed of me, but he wanted me to know what the rules were when it came to the world of royalty. Who the hell drank a teacup with their pinky finger extended? Apparently, the royal blood of the Remingtons did. Learning to sit tall with my back straight, my chest out, and my shoulders squared made me ache as if I'd run a marathon. Each time I slouched or murdered something, the woman stared at me as if I had committed murder. The experts themselves were another thing to talk about. The oldest among them was named Danielle Rochester, and she was as strict as a private school teacher, ready to slap your hand. She had blonde hair that she wore in a very tight bun and pale blue eyes. She wore a tight gray suit each day that she came, and I imagined her suits were pressed, labeled, and hung in order of days she wore them. She never crossed her legs, but simply tucked one ankle behind the other. The one day I did cross my legs, she raised an eyebrow that made me drop so fast and blush. She was constantly staring at me to make sure I would make a mistake. She frightened me endlessly. The second, Ronnie Rogers, was a petite woman with brown curls and eyes like melted chocolate. She was soft-spoken, kind, but obsessive about how things should be in a certain way. I labeled her as OCD. Like, for example, she always made sure she buttoned her coat from left to right, and the second button was always the last. Her shoes were taken off one by one and laid together with the soles pointing out. When she drank her tea, she turned the cup twice before twirling her spoon clockwise once, and always checked the temperature of the tea by licking the spoon. Odd, yes. And last, Jan Helmster was the plump, joyous one who couldn't stop smiling and laughing. In fact, her and Mrs. Potter became friends right away. She was a little older than Ronnie, but younger than Danielle. She smelled like mothballs and spice. Her frizzy blonde hair was never tamed, and her large blue eyes stared out at you like a fish in a bowl from behind her incredibly large spectacles. She never wore clothes that matched. Like today, she had on a pair of gray pants and a hot pink sweater. But she had great advice, and she was probably the only one who made any actual sense out of the three. Today's lesson is all about entering a room, Danielle said as she stood up and walked to the entrance of the main room. When you enter, the audience should be mesmerized by your entrance. The men will turn heads, and the women will pout in envy. Your husband will want everyone to admire you so he may earn good political points. If you make a dreadful entrance, society will less than be pleased with you and probably gossip about you from the west to the east end. You will lose society status and never get any invitations to any social gatherings. In other words, you will become exiled. I watched as she gracefully put her hands together and entered the room with her head held higher, her shoulders back, and her neck elongated. My eyes nearly popped out of my head as I watched her walk with such poise across the room. She then turned and stared at me. After a moment, I realized she was waiting for me to repeat what she did. I walked to the front of the room and saw all three ladies eyeing me. As I smiled, I began to feel the room spin, and then the vision blurred, and I was out like a light. Not a very graceful entrance. When I came to, I was lying on the couch and Garrison was massaging my feet. The three women were gone and the house was quiet. I tried to sit up and he helped me. He reached for the glass of water and handed it to me. I took a gulp and handed it back where he set it on the table. His eyes had that of a concerned husband. Well, I totally failed my first lesson entering a room. We're just never going to be invited anywhere, and we should probably just live as hermits, I said. He laughed. Forget what Danielle said. It's what she's paid to tell you, okay? Not all society gatherings are like that. You mean no one really does watch you as you enter the room and silently wonder if she's going to trip on her feet? He shrugged. Well, maybe the women might if they're jealous of how pretty you are, but the men would be dead if they even glance at you for a second. I laughed and rubbed my head. Oh, I'm so sorry. No, I'm sorry. You're exhausted. No wonder you blacked out. All these lessons, and you're pregnant. You shouldn't be this stressed. I saw his concern in his eyes and reached over to touch his face. I'm fine. I'm stronger than I look. I worry no matter. I know, but I must be the woman society wants. Otherwise, your name would be smeared. And that I couldn't bear, especially with a little Remington on the way. I want to be able to be a good wife to you in the public eye. He took my hand and kissed us so gently. I knew you were the most amazing thing on earth when I saw you the first time. Touched, I smiled. You are a believer of love at first sight, aren't you? Shaking his head, he replied, Never. I never believed in love. Not at all, not once. Witnessing my parents' marriage was enough to make me not to want to ever be in love. I was deathly afraid of it. I saw how torn my father was after my mother left. He wasn't the same. He lived, he ate, he breathed, but his eyes were soulless, and it scared me. I didn't want to end up like that. But then I met you, and for the first time, I wanted to risk all of that just to be with you. I mean, your smile, your eyes, and most especially your laugh gave me a sense of calm I never knew existed. I came from a broken home where all I knew was royalty, society, and status. But with you, I finally saw the real me. Without the royal cloak, just the man. And you fell in love with me even before you knew that I was royal. I bit my lips. How did you know that I was in love with you before? He kissed my fingers. Because you whispered it in your dreams when we were together in Jamaica? I did? I don't remember that. Of course not, but I do because I was watching you sleep. Why? He smiled. Why was I watching you sleep? Because I was afraid of the morning sun arriving and that you would leave me. I wanted to savor the moment I had with you, even if it meant I didn't get to sleep a week. You were so peaceful, and it was music to my heart. I wanted to mesmerize your breathing, your soft moans when you dreamt, and the way your lips seemed to invite me even in deep sleep. I wanted to drink it all in and lock it inside of me. Tears filled my eyes, and I moved closer to him, closing the distance between us. Could you say that one more time? Smiling, he reached for me. I'll say it as many times as you want, as long as I get to wake up next to you for the rest of my days. If love was a fairy tale, then I was living in one. Was it possible to love another human more than anything that existed on earth? It seemed so unreal to me that in a moment's pause, I found real love, and it welcomed me home to a place of comfort and safety. I had no worries, and all I could do for the first time in my life was truly live. Garrison was beyond anything words could describe. Each night as he held me, my heart seemed to flutter alive with his love. And when he made love to me, it was like a ship sailing home after being lost at sea. It was like finding out I had been blind for so long. He was my sight, my savior. I was truly happy, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. I was content with who I was and the moment I lived in. Garrison made sure I was always protected, and he meant what he said. I never knew love could be so pure, so powerful, and so addicting. Royalty was another thing. I wasn't used to servants serving me. When I woke, Mrs. Potter would have a tray of breakfast for me, and she would come to collect my clothes to wash. One time, she found me carrying the basket of laundry to wash and gave me an earful. I was being pampered due to my pregnancy, and also because I was a lady of the house. There wasn't anything else I could do or say that the servants wouldn't attend to. They made sure I was taken care of, but I wasn't used to it, and being left alone at times when Garrison had to be stuck in meetings with his father left me bored. "I am bored," I said one night after dinner. We were sitting together facing the setting sun. The workers were getting ready to leave for the day. I was tired, but I was also eager to start on something that was my own. "You're bored of me?" Garrison asked. Laughing, I turned to him. "No, never you. I have nothing to do. I'm not used to it." "Well, what would you like to do? I can send Mrs. Potter to get what you need and you can complete what you want." How can I put this in words you would understand? "I need a job." He laughed. "No." "Garrison, I can't just sit at home all day waiting for you to return." "Why not? The other wives do it." "I'm not like other wives. For one, I wasn't born royal. I've always had to work with my own two hands to get what I needed. And so I'm not used to this lifestyle. It's becoming thick with boredom. I need to do something valuable." "What do you mean?" "Well, I like teaching. I like children. I wanted to do some teaching to students." "At the university?" I rolled my eyes. "Garrison, I said children." "I understand. Some college students are still childish." "Okay, point taken." "All right, well, you know what? I'll talk to my father and see what he can do. I don't want him to pull any strings. I want to get this done on my own. I don't want anyone saying I got something done because I'm married to you or because Andrew spoke to someone. I want to be proud of what I'm going to do. And if you keep butting in, I'll never feel that glory." He reached over and touched my cheek. "I'm confused. I thought this was every girl's dream. I thought every girl wanted to be married to a rich, handsome man who could give her anything at a drop of a hat." I smiled. "I still do want that, but I also want to be me. I know you may not understand it because you were raised differently than I was. You're given a royal title to carry as soon as you were born, but me, I've had to fight for things I wanted in life. It's not easy, so can you just trust me on this? Let me do this on my own, okay?" He ran his hands over my knuckles. "But does this mean that you won't be home when I come back? Will we have to work to see each other?" "Of course not. Is that what you're worried about?" "I've seen what it can do to people, Peyton. The time spent apart, the fighting to have a romantic night out, it's all chaos. I hate it. I don't like it. And I don't want that with you." "You won't. You'll always have me. Remember what you said? I'm the first woman you've ever chased." He smiled, his eyes filling with the same smoky passion as when he needed me. "Of course. And I got you, didn't I?" "Yes. And you'll never get rid of me unless you say the words." Thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned for part 7 on the next episode. Thank you.